How your brain learns.
Yeah.
We're going way beyond the usual study tips, just
Okay.
like straight into the science behind it all.
Straight to the source, the brain's structure
Yeah.
and function.
So our guide for this deep dive is this fantastic article from Frontiers for Young Minds.
Okay.
And now before you think like, wait, isn't that for kids?
Right.
Let me show you. This publication is amazing.
Yeah.
It's all about making like really complex science clear and accessible.
Like we said, going right to the source.
Yes.
But sometimes just breaking it down simply,
Right.
even if you know it already, can be helpful.
Totally agree.
Yeah,
And it's peer-reviewed and accurate and even reviewed by students themselves.
that's right.
So you're getting the good stuff.
Yeah.
And honestly, even the simple stuff is mind-blowing when it comes to the brain.
Yeah.
This article starts with a fact that just floored me.
Okay.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Your brain has more neurons than there are visible stars in the night sky.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy?
It's a staggering number.
It's wild.
It is. We're talking like 85 billion neurons,
It's crazy.
each with up to 10,000 connections.
Yeah, it's literally like a galaxy
It really is like a galaxy in our heads.
inside our heads.
It's crazy.
So a galaxy that's constantly changing too.
All the time.
That's where neuroplasticity comes in.
Right.
It's a word we hear a lot these days.
We do.
But what does it actually mean?
Yeah.
For how we learn.
How do we break this down?
Yeah.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
Imagine walking through a dense forest.
Okay.
At first, it's tough. You're pushing through undergrowth. You're creating a new path.
I'm with you.
But the more you walk that path,
Yeah.
the clearer and easier it becomes.
Yeah, totally.
So that's a lot like how your brain strengthens connections between neurons.
So the more we engage with the skill
Mm.
or information, the stronger those neural pathways become.
Okay.
Making learning and recall just smoother.
Yes.
Right? It's like you're paving a mental superhighway.
I love that analogy.
Right.
Yeah.
But what happens when we stop practicing?
Oh,
Does that highway start to crumble?
that is a great analogy.
Does it?
You're right to ask about what happens when we stop.
Mm-hmm.
If you stop walking that forest path,
Right.
the vegetation grows back, the path fades.
It is.
Similarly, if we stop engaging with certain knowledge or skills,
Yeah.
those connections in our brains weaken.
So that's why picking up a subject after a long break can feel like starting over, even if it comes back to you eventually.
Yeah,
But the article did say that not all pathways disappear completely, right?
that's right.
Some become so ingrained
Yeah.
that they're always there,
They're just there.
even if they get a little rusty.
A little bit, yeah.
Like riding a bike.
Exactly like riding a bike.
You might wobble a bit after years of being off of one, but you don't totally forget how
You don't forget.
those neural connections are still there,
You are.
just weakened.
Right.
Oh, that's reassuring.
It is, yeah.
So our brains are always changing, adapting, forming new connections.
Oh.
It's both amazingly complex
Yeah.
and incredibly encouraging.
Mhm.
But knowing this, how can we actually use it
Right.
to learn more effectively?
That's the key question.
That is the question.
And that's where understanding a concept called repeated activation comes in.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Lay it on me.
Lay it on me.
That's one of the core strategies this article highlights.
Okay.
This is good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
It's good stuff.
So repeated activation,
Yeah.
what does that even mean in terms of how we learn?
Well, it might sound kind of obvious,
Okay.
but just passively,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
reading or listening to information
Mm-hmm.
isn't enough for our brains to really grasp it.
So I can't just zone out while listening to a lecture and expect it to magically sink in.
I wish it were that easy.
I know, right?
The key is something called active recall.
Active recall.
Yeah, we need to actually try to retrieve information
Yeah.
from our memory
Okay.
to strengthen those neural connections.
So struggling to remember something
Yes.
is actually a good sign.
It's a good thing.
Really?
It means you're learning.
Wow.
It's like you said before, like pushing through that overgrown forest path.
Right.
That feeling of effort.
Yeah,
Is your brain forging those new connections?
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we actually put this active recall
Right.
into practice?
Yeah.
I remember the article had some specific tips, right?
It did.
Yeah.
Like things like using flashcards,
Okay.
answering practice questions, or even just explaining a concept to someone else.
Got it.
All of these things force
Right.
us to actively engage with the information
Okay.
rather than just passively absorbing it.
It's like making our brains work for it.
Exactly. Make it work for it.
A little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit.
And speaking of making our brains work,
Yes.
the article said something really surprising about tests.
Okay.
It actually said they're better than studying.
Interesting, right?
I know.
I know no one loves exams,
Nobody.
but they force us to recall information.
That's true.
And that strengthens those connections way more than just reviewing material.
So quizzes aren't just about like assessing what we know.
Right.
They're actually a learning tool in themselves.
That's right. It's a learning tool.
That's a game changer.
Yeah.
Okay, so active recall is crucial.
It is.
But is there anything else we can do to kind of optimize how our brains learn?
Absolutely. It turns out it's not just about how much we practice, but how we spread that practice out over time.
So like taking breaks is actually good for learning.
It's true.
Really?
This is where the idea of spacing comes in.
Spacing.
Think about those neuron receptors.
Okay.
Those little electrical outlets in your brain.
Yep.
When we take breaks, those receptors get a chance to reset. So they become more sensitive and receptive to the next round of learning.
So it's like giving our brains a breather, letting everything sink in properly before we overload them again.
Right.
I like that.
I like that too.
Where does sleep fit into all of this?
Oh.
Is that a form of spacing too?
Sleep is actually more than just a break.
What?
It's like a superpower for learning.
Really?
While you sleep, your brain rehearses what you learned during the day.
Get out!
And it strengthens those neural pathways even more.
Hold on. My brain's working hard. Even when I'm catching Z's.
Even when you're sleeping.
This is amazing.
It's like a built-in study session.
Okay, does that mean those all-nighters before a big test
Oh, yeah.
are actually counterproductive?
Unfortunately, yes. Cramming doesn't give our brains the time.
Okay.
They need to consolidate information and build those strong, lasting connections.
I see.
So spacing and good sleep beat mass practice every time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Uh-huh.
It's all about working smarter, not harder.
I like that.
And understanding how our brains naturally learn best.
Yeah.
So we've got spacing, we've got sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Any other like practical tips from the article
Let's see.
on how to put all of this into action?
Okay, first break down your study sessions.
Okay.
Instead of one long marathon, try shorter focused bursts with breaks in between.
Got it.
Second, review quizzes are your friend.
Oh, yeah?
They force you to recall information at spaced intervals.
Yeah.
Which reinforces those connections.
So many light bulb moments happening right now.
I love it.
Okay. And there was one more technique I remember being particularly intrigued by.
Okay.
Something called interleaved practice, right?
You've got a great memory.
Thank you.
Interleaved practice basically means mixing up different subjects or topics
Okay.
during a study session. So instead of focusing on one thing for hours, you switch between a few different things.
Is that really more effective than just tackling subjects like one by one?
It can be switching back and forth, forces your brain to work harder to retrieve the relevant information,
Interesting.
making the learning process more active and engaging.
So it's like giving our brains a workout.
It is.
Keeping them on their toes.
Exactly. It helps challenge those neural pathways and build stronger connections.
I like it.
So we've got repeated activation through active recall. We've got spacing our practice and prioritizing sleep.
Yes.
These are all game changers when it comes to learning effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But was there anything else in the article that really stood out to you? Anything that surprised you or made you think differently about learning? You know, there was one more thing in the article, and it really struck me as being important.
Yeah.
The article pointed out that our brains actually learn best when we believe we can improve.
It's fascinating.
It's like what we're...
It highlights the connection between our thoughts, our beliefs, and how our physical brains work.
So you're saying like our mindset actually plays a role.
It does.
In how effectively we learn.
It really does.
That's pretty incredible.
It was when we approach learning with confidence, with a growth mindset.
Okay.
We're creating those ideal conditions for those neural connections to flourish.
So it's not just about like the strategies and the techniques.
It's more than that.
It's also about cultivating that belief in our own ability to learn and grow.
Exactly.
That's really empowering.
It is. It's about recognizing that power and that plasticity of our brains.
Yeah.
And approaching learning with a sense of possibility rather than limitation.
I love that.
Yeah.
This deep dive has been such an eye-opener.
It has.
We've gone from like the mind-boggling complexity of neurons to like practical, actionable strategies we can use to learn more effectively.
I'm feeling smarter already.
Me too. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired to take on some new challenges, knowing just how adaptable and powerful my brain is.
That's wonderful. And I think that's the best takeaway from all of this. As the article asks, knowing how powerful your brain is, what will you challenge yourself to learn next?
That's a great question for everyone out there listening.
It is.
So think about it.
What will you learn next?
What will you learn?
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening, everybody.